What's going on, Bottom Line viewers? It's Mitch of the Bottom Line View here to give you my predictions for the top 10 NFL offensive free agents in the 2017 offseason. So let's discuss the top 10 offensive free agents. I'm going to have a separate video talking about the top 10 defensive free agents. So make sure, if you're not already, subscribe to the channel so you can check that video out as well. And I'd really appreciate it if you guys hit that like button. For me, that would be awesome to let you know if you guys enjoy this type of content. So for the top 10 offensive free agents, I wanted to do it pretty simply. I'm going to give you 3 fits for every player. So what's a fit? A different team in free agency. I didn't include the team that they already currently play for or they played for last season, just because I'll discuss whether or not I think they're going to re-sign with that team. So I included 3 other fits across the league that I think would work for this player. So let's start off with number 10. I wanted to include a tight end in my top 10 rankings. I included Martellus Bennett in the top 10 offensive free agents because I wanted to include a tight end. So Martellus Bennett had a pretty decent season overall with the New England Patriots, kind of resurgent season. He was a little bit inconsistent here and there, but he was a steady target for Tom Brady in the New England Patriots offense, and now is a Super Bowl champion. He played 16 games, had 55 receptions, 701 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Very solid contributor in both the pass game and in the run game. The most impressive part of Martellus Bennett's game this year, I felt, was really in the run game and in pass protection, where he allowed Tom Brady some extra time and also allowed LeGarrette Blount and those runners bigger holes to run through. And also, he was just a great fill-in for Rob Gronkowski when he went down. There is no player really in the NFL that resembles Rob Gronkowski more than Martellus Bennett. He's a big target. Sure, he's not as explosive, fast, or as great at getting open, but he's the closest thing that we have to Rob Gronkowski in the fact that he can both run, he can catch, he can run routes, and he's a very smart player. So I think Martellus Bennett will end up in these 3 destinations, other than New England, where I think there is a chance he will resign, but because the Patriots have so many other priorities in this offseason, I doubt it, just because I think Bennett is looking for a bigger contract. So, the 3 fits that I think where Bennett could end up is the LA Rams, the Denver Broncos, and the Indianapolis Colts. The LA Rams are a team that hasn't had a tight end in a very, very long time. They let go of Jared Cook last season. He never really worked out for them. Maybe they're looking for a guy that can help their young quarterback develop and can allow them a security blanket underneath for Jared Goff. And then for the Denver Broncos, I think they haven't had a tight end as well for a while. Since Julius Thomas really left, Owen Daniels filled in their Super Bowl season. But then they traded for A.J. Derby last year from the Patriots. He was okay, but Martellus Bennett, I think, would provide them that third target in the offense that they're desperately needing. They really haven't had one in quite a while in their passing game. And for whoever their quarterback is, whether it's Trevor Siemian, whether it's Paxton Lynch, whether it's Tony Romo, that can provide them a third target in their offense that they desperately need behind Sanders and Demaryius Thomas. And then for the Indianapolis Colts, they're letting go of Doyle most likely. He's going to be a free agent. They could re-sign him, but if not, they could sign Martellus Bennett. They love getting targets for Andrew Luck. They love getting veteran players on the offensive side of the ball. And I think this could be another addition to their offense. Dwayne Allen has kind of been disappointing in that facet at the tight end position for the Colts. And I think Martellus Bennett could bring more explosion to their offense in that way. So where will Martellus Bennett end up? I think Martellus Bennett will end up in LA. I think that's the most logical thing because I think he'll be thrown the most money at from the LA Rams. Do I think that that's possibly the best fit for his football style? No. He might not even like playing there, but LA is a nice city. It's a good place to play, and they'll probably offer him a lot of money. So I'm going to go with the LA Rams. I could see him also ending up in Denver and Indianapolis and back with New England, of course. So we go on to number 9, Latavius Murray. Latavius Murray is the second best running back in free agency, in my opinion. Latavius Murray ended up with 12 touchdowns last year. He had 788 yards on 195 attempts. He was a 4.0 yards per carry and had 33 catches for 264 yards. He's a versatile running back, and also the thing that I like about Latavius Murray that is quite different from other backs across the league is he's very tall. He measures in about 6'3", and he's had a couple of very good seasons in his NFL career. I think that somebody will be willing to pay him in free agency. The 3 fits I have for him are Carolina, Indianapolis, and Baltimore. Now, why do I bring up those 3 teams? I bring up Carolina because Jonathan Stewart has been injured for much of his career. He's a very solid running back when he does play, but they need another guy similar to how they had D'Angelo and Jonathan. Now they might have Latavius and Jonathan there in Carolina. They really love to run the ball, and I think Latavius could bring something else to that offense. Then you go to Indy, where I think Indy is a team that, they have Frank Gore, who he's pretty old. I don't know how much legs he has left, how much longer he's going to actually play in the NFL. And then for Baltimore, you have 2 guys that were really unproven last season. Nobody really stepped up at the running back position for Baltimore. So Latavius Murray could step in there and provide a nice presence. Baltimore's always an offense that likes to run the ball. Even though last season they kind of got away from that, I think they'd like to get back to that power run game, which Latavius Murray could definitely give them a presence inside the red zone with his 12 touchdowns. So which team do I think Latavius Murray will go to? I'm going to guess Indianapolis. I mean, all of these are really guesses because I'm not Adam Schefter and I'm not talking to the coaches and I'm not talking to the GMs. So for me, I'm going to go with Indianapolis because I think it's a good fit. I think he could provide an explosive presence there. Unless Indy decides that they want to draft a running back, I think that Latavius Murray would be a solid addition. He's already a guy that's played a couple of seasons in the NFL, knows what to expect, doesn't have much tread on his tires, and he's a versatile running back that I think would be nice in the Colts system. So I'm going to go with Latavius Murray teaming up with Andrew Luck in 2017. And then we go to number 8 with Desean Jackson. Desean Jackson is a receiver that has always been known to be a deep threat. He's actually had a very, very solid career playing for the Eagles and the Washington Redskins. Last season, he had 56 catches for 1,005 yards and 4 touchdowns. Desean Jackson, very, very solid receiver throughout the course of his career, like I said. And he provides something special to a lot of offenses. He provides the ability to give you a deep threat. He provides speed, and he provides the ability to stretch a defense. So when thinking about that, I'm thinking about teams that not only need a wide receiver, but would also benefit from the fact that Desean Jackson is a deep threat. So I'm looking at these teams in particular. Back to the Philadelphia Eagles, where there have been rumblings and rumors about Desean Jackson going back to them. And then you have Tennessee, who's a very high-powered running attack that I think if they had a deep threat would really benefit from Desean Jackson's presence, opening up the run game a little bit more and adding Marcus Mariota at target. Then you go to Carolina. Carolina is a team that they love to throw the ball deep. Cam Newton has a friggin' cannon of an arm, so I think Desean Jackson's speed coupled with the size that they already have at receiver would be very nice and a very good combination. You also saw earlier in Cam Newton's career how he loved Steve Smith, who's a smaller wide receiver and quicker, faster wide receiver. So I think Desean Jackson would fit in there as well. And for a 4th team, I think LA Chargers or Rams, but I would go with the Rams because I think they have the money to pay Jackson. I think Jackson likes being in LA. And I also think that they really need a receiver. They're not going to be fielding Kenny Britt many more years. So Desean Jackson would be a nice fit in all 4 of those locations. If I had to pick a team, I think I would go with the Eagles simply because he's familiar there. He liked playing there until he left to Washington, and he has a lot of former teammates that still play there. So I think that Desean Jackson going back to Philly would make a lot of sense. I could see all the other teams happening for sure, but Philadelphia would definitely benefit from having Carson Wentz, a young quarterback, having to have a reliable deep threat in their offense. They don't really have any receivers. You could definitely say that they were the worst receiving core in the NFL last season. So team up Desean Jackson with Jordan Matthews, and I think you have a pretty good duo there in Philly. So I'm going to put Desean Jackson on the Eagles in 2017. At number 7, I have Andrew Whitworth, who is a tackle from the Cincinnati Bengals. He is the best tackle in the free agency market this season. So I think there are a lot of teams that need a tackle. There's Seattle, there's Minnesota, there's Carolina. Those are the 3 teams that I really look to that need a tackle desperately. I could see him going to any of these teams, but the one that makes the most sense is in Minnesota, where his former coach, defensive coordinator, is now the head coach of Minnesota. I think that connection would bring Andrew Whitworth in the later years of his career to Minnesota. Now, we know that Minnesota is a team that is looking to win the Super Bowl. They traded for Sam Bradford last season thinking that they had a Super Bowl chance, and they were very good at the beginning of the season, but just dropped off. So for me, I think Andrew Whitworth would be a very solid addition to Minnesota. He's still a top 10 offensive lineman in the NFL, and he could really add some presence along that offensive line as well as leadership. So I think Andrew Whitworth could help mask the deficiencies of Minnesota's offense last season and help whoever is under center next season. So Andrew Whitworth is going to go to Minnesota in 2017. At number 6, I have TJ Lang. TJ Lang is the second best guard in the free agency this offseason, in my opinion. His fits are kind of interesting because it's definitely hard to nail down a guard because anybody could really use a guard, to be honest. But except for maybe the Cowboys and the Raiders. But for me, you look at San Diego, Indianapolis, and Cleveland as 3 possible destinations. All 3 of these offensive lines were awful last season. And these are all 3 teams that would be willing to pay an offensive lineman. Definitely the LA Chargers would be a team that I would like to see him go to because I think they have some potential. I really like Phillip Rivers, and I think he would like to go to another team with a good quarterback. I'm not sure if Green Bay will end up re-signing him or not because they have a couple of other guys that they need to sign. So for me, I think TJ Lang will go somewhere else, and that somewhere else will probably end up being Cleveland. Cleveland is a team that has a lot of salary cap. Sure, they have a lot of draft picks, but I think they'd rather address their offensive line in free agency. So for me, I'm going to go with TJ Lang going to Cleveland and help shoring up that offensive line that Alex Mack left, and they really need that interior presence. So TJ Lang is going to be the right guard for the Cleveland Browns in 2017. At number 5, I have Terrelle Pryor. Terrelle Pryor is the wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, former quarterback for the Oakland Raiders. I think that Terrelle Pryor had an awesome season last year. He was probably the best and brightest spot of the Cleveland Browns last season. He had 77 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 4 touchdowns in 16 games last year. I think Terrelle Pryor will fit in with many teams. I think many teams could be looking for a wide receiver in this offseason, including both the teams in LA, Philadelphia, and Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is interesting because I think that Tampa Bay is a team that's looking for a Mike Evans duo. And then you have Philadelphia, who, like I said, will probably sign Desean Jackson, but if not, could be looking to Terrelle Pryor and could offer some money. And maybe for a younger player like Terrelle Pryor, they would offer more money for him. And both the teams in LA desperately need a receiver. But for me, I'm going to say that Terrelle Pryor sticks in Cleveland. I think they really like him in Cleveland. I think they like his attitude. And I think that Terrelle Pryor was the best part of the team last year. So how can you not sign the best part of your team last year? They also have a lot of salary cap, and they know that they can have a solid duo with him and the kid in Cleveland. So I think that they want to provide whoever is going to play quarterback for them next season a solid wide receiver core. And I think by adding Terrelle Pryor back to that mix, you'd have a solid wide receiver core. So for me, Terrelle Pryor is going to go back to Cleveland in 2017. At number 4, I have Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins, you could argue, is the number 1 target in free agency for the offense because he is a quarterback and because he's the best quarterback on the board. But he's also a guy that their franchise in Washington still has doubts about, and you could see that because they still haven't paid him. Do I think he'll go back to Washington? I'm pretty much 90% sure he'll go back to Washington, but if he wasn't to go back to Washington with over 4,900 yards, 25 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and 97.2 passer rating, that's a pretty impressive stat line right there. I think that he would go to San Francisco, Chicago, or Cleveland. These are all 3 teams that need a quarterback, especially San Fran, who I think could be a dark horse for Kirk Cousins' services because I think Kyle Shanahan wants to bring in a quarterback that he can trust, and I think that San Fran is really looking for a quarterback. Chicago is as well. I mean, they're moving on from Jay Cutler, and Cleveland, of course, is always in the market. But Kirk Cousins, I just think, belongs in Washington. He's played very well for them. And I just think it doesn't make sense for him to go anywhere else. So I'm going to say Kirk Cousins remains in Washington, and I think they'll do everything they can to retain their weapons that are already in free agency, like Pierre Garçon, who they'll probably bring back Pierre Garçon to help Kirk Cousins out. And they still have Reed and Jamison Crowder and everything. So I think Kirk Cousins will be back in Washington. At number 3, I have Alshon Jeffery. Alshon Jeffery is the best receiver pretty much by far in the free agency. He's the only guy, in my opinion, that can go up and make plays and really, just absolutely make ridiculous catches. For me, Alshon Jeffery's been a very solid receiver. His only downfall has really been his injury history. Last season, he played 12 games, had 52 receptions, 800 yards, and 2 touchdowns with really bad quarterback play. He could fit on a number of teams. A number of teams need wide receivers, including Tennessee, Tampa Bay, Philadelphia, and the LA Rams. I don't think he'll go to the LA Chargers because I think they still believe Keenan Allen will be a top-notch wide receiver, and they don't want to pay another top-notch wide receiver. So for me, I'd rule Philadelphia out because I think Desean Jackson is going to go there. So if I'm relying on my predictions, I think Philadelphia will be out in this sweepstakes. I think that the team that makes the most sense is Tennessee. Tennessee is a team that really needs a number 1 wide receiver. They have all the makings of a playoff team next year. They have a young, good quarterback. They have 2 very solid running backs, a very good offensive line, a defense that is on the rise, and if they shore up that secondary, they could be a very, very under-the-radar team next season. So for me, Alshon Jeffery, adding that to Tennessee's offense would be definitely potent because they already have Delanie Walker, who's basically their number 1 receiver at the tight end position. They have a couple of other solid guys, but I'm looking to Alshon Jeffery on the outside to make those plays when needed on third down in the red zone. That could add another dimension to the Tennessee offense that they don't have. So for me, I think Tennessee will go out and sign Alshon Jeffery to a big contract. They have the salary cap, and I think that's the best move to help out your young quarterback. I'm going to say Alshon Jeffery ends up in Tennessee in 2017. At number 2, I have Kevin Zeitler. Kevin Zeitler is the best guard or best offensive lineman in free agency. He's also very young. He will probably not end up going back to Cincinnati, as I've heard. So, if he's not going to go back to Cincinnati, I think there are a number of teams that would like his services, including the LA Chargers, the Denver Broncos, and the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I think that his teammate Andrew Whitworth will probably end up in Minnesota. So, I'm going to rule Minnesota out for another big-time lineman. I think Minnesota's guards aren't that bad. It's mostly their tackles. And then you look to Denver. I think Denver is the team that would pay this kid. I mean, he's a very good guard. They already have a very good center in Paredes. Zeitler is one of the best guards in the league, especially in run blocking. And I think Denver really struggled in run blocking last season. So for me, I think Zeitler will go to Denver because I think Denver is looking to shore up their interior offensive line. They had a pretty poor offensive line last season, and I think John Elway has been really good with paying some top-tier free agents in the past. So for me, I'm going to say Kevin Zeitler goes to Denver to make that offense even better. Now, who will be quarterbacking? I don't know. Maybe it'll be Trevor Siemian, but with the additions of potentially Martellus Bennett and potentially Kevin Zeitler, that could be a very good Denver Broncos offense next season, but I'm going to say that Zeitler ends up in Denver. At number 1, I have Leveon Bell. Now, Leveon Bell is the best running back in the NFL. Will he go back to Pittsburgh? I'm not quite sure, but with these stats, I think he should. I mean, he had like almost 2,000 yards in 12 games. He had 75 catches, 9 touchdowns, and almost 5 yards per carry. So if I was Pittsburgh, I would pay Le'Veon Bell. But if he wasn't going to go back to Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh somehow let him go through his hands, Tampa Bay is there, Detroit is there, and Philadelphia is there. These are the 3 teams that I look at and say Le'Veon Bell would be a nice fit in all 3 of these teams. Tampa Bay is probably going to move on from Doug Martin as their lead back, and I think Le'Veon Bell with Jameis Winston and Mike Evans would be an absolutely potent offense. Detroit is a team that's been looking for a running back for a very, very long time. They really don't have anybody in that number 1 spot Riddick is a pass-catching running back. He's very good at that, but he's not a lead back. Abdullah was injured last season, and Zach Zenner, he's not a lead back. He's a complementary piece. Philadelphia, Ryan Matthews hasn't really worked out. DeMarco Murray didn't work out. Maybe Le'Veon Bell would be the key there. If they don't sign a big-time wide receiver, they could look to Le'Veon Bell to be that guy. So, for me, I think Le'Veon Bell will end up in Pittsburgh. He's too influential on that offense, and I think he'll be a lot of money, which teams will shy away from for running backs because running backs don't last that long. But I think Pittsburgh realizes that their whole offense is oriented around Le'Veon Bell. So for me, Le'Veon Bell is going to end up back in Pittsburgh and play for the Steelers in 2017. So my top 10 offensive free agents, Le'Veon Bell will be playing for the Steelers. Kevin Zeitler will be playing for the Broncos. Alshon Jeffery will be playing for the Titans. Kirk Cousins will be back in Washington. Pryor will be back in Cleveland. TJ Lang will join Terrelle Pryor in Cleveland. Minnesota will pick up Andrew Whitworth at tackle. Desean Jackson will go back to Philadelphia. Latavius Murray will join Andrew Luck in Indianapolis. And Martellus Bennett will end up in LA as a Ram. So, those are the top 10 free agents for the NFL offseason. Let me know where you guys think that these top 10 free agents will end up. Le'Veon Bell, Kevin Zeitler, Alshon Jeffery, Kirk Cousins, Terrelle Pryor, TJ Lang, Andrew Whitworth, Desean Jackson, Latavius Murray, and Martellus Bennett. It's Mitch of the Bottom Line View. If you enjoyed, Gronk spike that like button and subscribe for more NFL offseason discussion. I'm going to have a top 10 NFL defensive free agents list up in a little bit. So stay tuned to the Bottom Line View. Thanks guys for watching, and peace out.